Sony are washed.
What?
Josh Brown.
No, they're
Sony
not.
don't know what the living hell they're doing. This broke late last week. Bloomberg reporting that internally Sony had cancelled a live service God of War game.
Would you have preferred that they didn't cancel it and release it, Scott Taylor?
I would have preferred they didn't put it into development or cared about it or uttered those words out loud at all. But why are we in a timeline where there's a God of War live service game that was in production for a good few years? Now it's been cancelled. They also had renowned remaster studio Bluepoint working on the damn thing, the people who brought you Demon's Souls and who are known for doing incredible remaster and remake work, just saying, hey, do you guys want to do do you want to do the complete opposite of what you're known for? Do you want to just do something over there instead of what might actually work for them? All of this stuff is apparently because, according to insider Jeff Grubb, cancelling these games, this game, there's another game, is a direct response to how badly Concord performed last year, as that game was removed after 2 weeks on sale. All copies were removed from sale. I think you can still buy the controller. It's admittedly a nice looking controller. It's the best thing about the whole thing. Jeff Grubb said Sony has been shell-shocked from Concord, and now they're going around to every studio, reassessing every single project. If it's a live service project, it has a lot of friction going against it, preventing it from getting a chance to actually come out. Alongside the God of War live service game being cancelled, Sony have also cancelled a live service title from Days Gone studio Bend. However, that isn't detailed. It was just mentioned that they had a multiplayer game in production. It's going to be a live service title, but it's not Days Gone 2, which I feel like over the years has become a bit of a cult classic. Maybe you could have done a Days Gone 2 or something. I did want to throw in the 12 live service games were initially put in motion back in 2022, and right now that still includes Fair Games, Bungie's Marathon, and the Horizon MMO. There's also apparently a Horizon co-op game coming out, but we don't know what the recurrent spend is going to be on the Horizon side of things. Alongside that, though, you have Spider-Man's live service title, The Great Web, a Twisted Metal game, and The Last of Us Factions all being canned, despite The Last of Us Factions making it to Summer Game Fest 2022. All of this stuff being under Jim Ryan. He was the PlayStation CEO, saying back in 2022 that live service titles were the future of the industry, man. That's what everyone's going to be buying, man. And they
Jim, man.
clearly did not. Dude stepped down March 2024, largely walking. It was just before Concord came out. I think Dude saw the writing on the wall, knew what that thing was going to be. Insider reports said the Concord was actually Herman Holst's baby. Yeah. But still, Jim Ryan left after setting all this stuff in motion. And now I feel like the rest of Sony and us, the gamers, the generation overall, has to deal with the fallout. A lot of conversation coming out of this as to have Sony just wasted their entire generation, or there's so many irons in this particular fire that we're never going to pan out. Obviously, Helldivers 2 is a big success, or was a big success last year. But overall, the amount of push from Sony to try and capitalize on this already dying market is insane.
Listen, we're going to criticize this, of course we are. We're going to talk about how much time has been wasted.
Hey, if you can be the other side of it, go for it.
Not the other side of it, but look, let's criticize them for spending so much time on this obviously doomed enterprise from the Jim Ryan era. Why the hell have some of your greatest developers been working on these live service games that you've now cancelled when they could have been working on stuff that they were more well known for, that was even maybe more bankable in the eyes of Sony, that people were wanting, Bloodborne 2 or a Bloodborne remaster or a Days Gone 2 or whatever it was. But at the same time, I kind of do go back to what I said at the start. Like, I'm going to criticize them for it, but what's the alternative for me? Like, push ahead with them just because they've had 3 years in development and release them and no one wants them. You have Concord again. Obviously, there were always going to be, changes when Jim Ryan exited and we got our new core CEOs. To me, yes, this is an admission that they have wasted essentially the first part of the generation, but I'd rather them figure it out now than at the start of the PlayStation 6 generation. You know what I mean? It's not great. It's the worst. It's the best of a bad situation, all told. I'm not going to give them many props from having to have this realization at all, but it's
good to turn the ship rather than plow into the rocks.
Exactly. Sure. At least they're having it now, and hopefully these studios can recalibrate. Hopefully there aren't layoffs. Hopefully they can be moved on to a new project that, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they wanted to make these live services. Maybe they were their babies, but if they weren't, and if they were like this mandated thing, like you said, of needing a quarter of live service games released, hopefully they can have more free reign to do whatever they want, because it has been a disaster top to bottom, but hopefully now this is the last remnants of that push and we can, like you said, turn the ship rather than plowing it into an iceberg.
I definitely view it as just, what the hell were you thinking? Why did you put these things in motion? It was always going to fail. God of War, there's a God of War multiplayer game in Ascension, and everyone hated it back then. Like, you can't do this.
No, go on. Sorry,
No, well, that's my thing. Is I get that yours is a more optimistic look at it, or a more like other side of the coin look at it, which is, look, what do you want them to do now? This is the reality that we're in. What can you do in the present day? Yeah, fair enough. You might as well cancel those things and try and set things back in motion and keep going forward, which is completely fair enough. I just can't get over the Jim Ryan or whatever thought this was it, getting out there talking about how this was the future of the industry. When there's just, and the things that they've cancelled, like we rolled our eyes at a Spider-Man live service game.
Yes.
And it's not like I would have taken a Twisted Metal game. That would have totally worked. Destruction All-Stars with better weapons and a Twisted Metal skin. Obviously, there's season 2 on Peacock. Like, the show's done pretty well and it's solid enough. That had enough of like, I'll try that out. Versus Concord was like, get it the hell away from me. I'm good. And then doing Last of Us Factions, like, you're cancelling the stuff that actually would have turned heads.
Yeah, right.
And it would have at least made people give it a go. But I guess there was so much money invested in these things. And obviously some of these games were cancelled even during Jim Ryan's tenure, where it just didn't seem like it was going to play out. What are you going to say there before I go on to my next thing?
No, pretty much what you just said. I think, you cancel 12 of these games, a lot of them from great studios like Blue Point, like Bend.
Not all 12 just yet. There's still some in motion.
Sorry, yeah. You cancelled, like 7 of them.
It's most of them at this point.
A good chunk of them, right? And I think just like laws of averages says that some of those probably would have been good, given the caliber of the developers, given the actual quality of the ideas. It wasn't for me, but that live service MMO style Spider-Man game, when you look in the comments on, at least from the videos that I watch, a surprising amount of people are like, that would have been sick. Why didn't they push ahead with that? And that's what I also say for The Last of Us Factions. Why didn't they push ahead of that and just release a version of it?
Factions is the open goal.
That's what you would think, right? So it's not like all of these were going to be doomed or all of these were going to be disasters, but it's interesting how sort of cutthroat Sony has been with it over the past year, I guess, to just say, especially after Concord, of course, and you would be cutthroat, I suppose, after you lost so much money on that project, but just to say, yeah, actually, we need to have a major rethink. We are completely cutting ties with the majority of these that are at least from studios that are known for single-player games. Like even Guerrilla, even though, we've had Horizon recently, they still have a history with multiplayer stuff, with the Killzone multiplayer suites, so it's not like they are maybe more equipped to make a live service multiplayer thing than, I don't know, someone like Sony Bend or whatever, or Blue Point. But still, they're in an interesting position, and I'm trying to take the optimistic approach, right? I'm trying to view this as people patching up the mistakes that Jim Ryan made, who, again, I was admittedly also too lenient on when he was in charge. I was thinking maybe he knows what he's doing. I think in hindsight, we can agree that he did not know what he was doing. You didn't have to give it to him.
No, I feel like it's interesting thinking about the Jim Ryan the generation so far, everything under his tenure versus what we currently have with Herman Holst and Hideaki Nishino, where they're both, I look at it specifically through the PlayStation Plus lens, the way that Jim Ryan treated PlayStation Plus and the way that these two do, where you're getting so many more classics out there on PlayStation Plus. You're reminding people of PlayStation's legacy. It's not just about the newest, shiniest live service, recurrent spending thing. It's the pillars of what got you here in the first place, and doing as much as you can with that. I think that kind of speaks volumes. Also, in the background of all of this stuff was the Bungie acquisition, was putting Bungie at the front of analyzing which projects they thought were going to work. But then obviously way more came out about Bungie, about how internally they are also on fire and they can't decide what the hell they want to do. So I can't imagine what it's like realizing that stuff in real time. We have this team of experts that we're going to put, you guys go assess all these different studios, and then realizing months later, they had ulterior motives potentially to say that these projects weren't going to work so that their stuff would look even better. Like, there's all that stuff going on, which obviously a lot of that is inferred, a lot of that is conjecture or whatever, but the bits and pieces are there from the internal reports where the grounding is solid enough. If you're Jim Ryan and you care so much about shareholders and spend and everything else, and you're just going, well, I would greenlight 12 projects. That's a big number, but if they all hit, we're Sony, screw it. Let's put Bungie in charge of making sure they're a high-quality bar studio. Put them in. Clay doesn't play Destiny, but he's put them in there. That makes sense if you're a disconnected, non-game playing executive who just tries to do right by the financials. And the whole thing blew up in his face. I want to touch on the projects that are still in motion in a minute, but just all that stuff is crazy.
Yeah, just like you said, from Jim Ryan's perspective, like you're looking at the graphs, like I love to do, and you're looking at like we said earlier in the podcast, the budget for Horizon going from $60 million to $220 million. And you're looking at the player base not growing in accordance to that. You're thinking, how can I grow this business? How can I make more money? How can I impress my overlords and make sure they're getting the revenue that they want? Oh my God, look at how much live service is doing. We're Sony, we've got all these IPs, let's put 12 of them into production. It's the only way we can grow. But sometimes you don't grow, Scott. Sometimes you don't even stagnate. Sometimes you actually crater and bring those numbers down because out of those titles, how many are going to be a hit? And even if we budget them, I know Concord allegedly had a $400 million budget, but let's just say for sake of argument, it was closer to 200 like Forbidden West or The Last of Us Part 2. And let's say like a bunch of those 12 games had a $200 million budget. You're looking at a total spend that is crazy. Like that is a huge amount of money to spend on 12 games, 12 live service games, which one might hit and be a success you want, and maybe it's going to be worth it if that one does hit and you get Fortnite numbers or GTA Online numbers, but that's a big old risk at the cost of not just 12 games, but 12 plus studios who are working on their games when they could be working on something else that is more steady, that is what the people who buy a PlayStation actually want.
Totally.
It is I can understand the gambit. I think it's a bad one, but I can understand it.
I think it's just, I understand the causality of how it came together. It's just that nothing that's in progress, because right now the only games that are in motion, I'll get to them in a sec, but it's the 3 that I mentioned before, and something called Gummy Bears, which is a spin-off from Bungie doing their own little separate title or whatever. Nothing from Killzone, Resistance, even if you're going to resurrect like MAG or whatever that was on the PS3. Like, you have these titles or you have these associations that you could pull from the developers that brought you Killzone. Here's the new, PlayStation first-person shooter. Like, how do they not have a first-party first-person shooter that is just as, builds up and gets there over time? Like, just making investments in the worst possible way. Let's touch on the stuff that is still in motion. Fair Games, I think, is the next Concord.
Yeah.
I just don't see that doing anything. I think it's an extraction shooter. They've shown it as like a heist-based thing with a monkey masks and everything. I will be amazed if that thing still makes any money. It seems like it's viewed positively internally. Like, it's managed to survive all these other cut-offs and everything. It's somehow more worth keeping around than a Spider-Man, a Twisted Metal, or whatever. So, what do you think of that?
I think it's... Oh man, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't necessarily like the look of it. I can understand why that's being kept and something like Spider-Man hasn't, because the developers are, they're primarily focused on multiplayer games in a way that maybe Insomniac wasn't, and their time would have been better spent elsewhere. I think when we're talking about these live service successes, you need to be more than just positive. You need to be more than just good, right? Concord, for all of its failings, was good. It was all right. It wasn't a disaster.
No, it
wasn't a complete trash fire of a gameplay experience. It was just all right. It was very ignorable. And I think that's, to me, the way that Fair Games is heading, and I don't want it to be. I want it to come out and surprise everyone. But I can just see it being a thing that might be decent, might be all right, but is it going to catch on in the way that Sony or the developers want it to? It's such a hard market, man.
I have a feeling that the more you launch with a breadth of quality, which should be the thing people want, the more people go, well, I haven't got that much time. I can't take on the dailies, the weeklies, the grind, the different missions that you want me to do this campaign, this, this, what do you call this? The raids. I can't take this raid on for 45 minutes. I've got 20 minutes or whatever it is. I think that's why Helldivers 2 did so well. Like, an average mission in Helldivers is maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You can drag them out. You can do more things. They're optional objectives. But if that's all the time you've got, sick, you can just get in there and do a thing and get out. And I wonder how much that plays in as well, because the more you spend time going like, well, we've got all these rollouts and there's seasons of content, there's something mentally there where like the comprehending that is like, oh my God, I can't. I can't. I'm full. I'm stuffed. I've eaten so much and I can't take this on as well. And I wonder how much that is a consumer response, where Concord seemed to be, a lot of it seemed to be the art direction, based on the art direction, because it did play pretty well, but then no one played the beta. So it's
true.
No one was even bothered about checking it out. And so I wonder about that. Bungie's Marathon is one of the other ones that's coming out, which, according to various reports, Bloomberg, the Jeff Grubbs of the world diving in, seems like that is just very much struggling to come together. It was meant to be an extraction shooter. I think that is currently what it's meant to be.
Yes, still.
But extraction shooters aren't the next battle royale, aren't the thing that people seem to really care about. And so that one's still in motion. And then they've got the Horizon MMO, which, sure, like,
that could
whatever.
be all right.
Yeah, it's just their version of Monster Hunter at best,
exactly,
I guess.
Yeah, it would work, maybe. It's not for me, but I can see the vision with it, at least.
I can see it. When I look at it and I imagine, like, I don't know how many players you're going to get, like a handful of players. I know there's some leaked gameplay for it. Handful of players taking down a Thunderjaw together. Sick. I did that. I've done that in Monster Hunter for like 20 years. And Monster Hunter Wilds is out this year as well. So I just look at this and go, you've made a series of bad bets.
Yeah.
And you've cancelled the wrong stuff. And now it's just this. We've just got to watch this car crash in slow motion for the next like 4 years.
Yeah.
Until it's all drained, and then we can like go forward.
You know
properly.
what? Like I don't necessarily think they're going to be huge successes, but I would like to see them get a win, just because, like you said, as a Sony player, I want a first-person shooter on their machine that plays well, that is good, that people like.
That'd be cool.
Fair games, I don't think that's going to necessarily be it, but I guess that's got to be free to play now, right? I don't know if it was initially intended to be, but I think that $30 price tag on Concord didn't kill it entirely, but it certainly didn't help. And you've just seen the likes of Marvel Rivals blow up a free-to-play game that everyone is playing right now that has overtaken Overwatch, Overwatch 2. So I think if you get the market right at the very least, I know you might take a hit and it's maybe a bigger risk, but I think the amount of people you might turn off with that price tag for fair games is going to negate making it free-to-play and opening it up. I don't know if Bungie will do that. It doesn't really seem like their MO, but maybe they'll do that with Marathon. I don't know if that's been announced.
It hasn't yet, but it's got to be a PlayStation Plus game. Like, I always just think to Rocket League. Like, Rocket League was on PS Plus. No one knew what it was. Like, Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Powered Battle Cars did F all.
Yeah.
Like, that game completely bombed. And then you had Psyonix just take a beat and go, no, we have a good idea here. Put the exact same thing out again, but put it on PlayStation Plus. And as soon as people played it, they were like, this is sick.
Yeah.
And then it blew up and it stayed in the top 10 for the last 9 years. Like, it's awesome. You've got to get stuff in front of people. Like, Concord's price tag made people bounce off, even if they were remotely interested in giving it a shot. Like I said, people didn't even play the free beta, so whatever. But still, PS Plus has a bit of a, this is a curated selection for you kind of thing, as opposed to, I think, a lot of betas have an association of being broken or in progress. Whereas if you get something on PS Plus, at least people will give it a chance. And that's such an association with PlayStation.
I know Sony doesn't do this, but whack it out in early access. Get those extensive play tests beyond a beta a month or two before the game comes out. Like, do that Overwatch thing. Overwatch 1 thing of getting it in front of players, allowing them to have not necessarily a huge say, but in terms of what they like, what they don't like, what's balanced, what's unbalanced. You learn so much from opening the game up like that beyond your own internal QA teams that, oh God, just get it in front of people. Convince people if you believe in your product, if the product is good, give it a fighting chance. Don't just dump it out and be like, oh, it's there if you want it. Who's asked them?